Hello and welcome to episode 186 of Magic Rays of Light. I'm your host, Sigmund Judge. This week, I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Editor-in-Chief at 9to5Mac and co-host of the 9to5Mac Happy Hour. My friend, and I'd imagine everyone's at this point, Chance Miller.
Thank you for having me, Sigmund. Thank you for the introduction. I don't know if everybody would call me their friend, but I try. I try to be friendly. Was that WWDC 2 years ago that we spent a bunch of time together?
Yeah.
Yep, that was so much fun.
Didn't make my way over this year, but maybe next year. I mean, tvOS isn't the biggest priority, and I think that's probably where we should probably start. Of course, we're exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more together, but I know you recently moved. I was wondering, alongside that move, if there are any larger aspirations for your Apple TV setup and home theater, or what your setup is currently?
So one of the things that we have at our new house in Michigan that we didn't have in Baltimore is a basement. So for the first time, we were able to build out, I say build out, but not really build out, but get a nice couch, move the nice TV from the living room to the basement, have a little bit more of a home theater setup. But one thing I did need a new Apple TV. I have extra Apple TVs for whatever reason. But I did need a new HomePod. So I got a new second generation HomePod so I could make a stereo pair. I only had one, needed two. And it's funny, I've told this story before, but I got the HomePod 2 at Best Buy, brought it home, plugged it in, set it up, and everything was perfect, working perfectly. A few days into it, I noticed that the little display on the top of the HomePod, which you don't really use or see very often, it did not light up.
Huh.
Like you long press to activate the voice assistant, or you say the voice assistant word, or you're playing something and you see the little waveform along the top. Did not see any of it. So it worked fine. Otherwise, the audio worked. You could use the voice assistant and everything. But I was just a little worried that if you have some sort of hardware problem that early in the lifespan of a product, that it was going to lead to bigger hardware problems down the road. So I went to Best Buy and exchanged it. New one works great. Lights up for however useful that part of it is. But as for the Apple TV itself, nothing really changed. I'm using an Apple TV 4K. And when I think about Apple TV hardware wishes, I know you'll probably disagree with me, but there's not much on my list. I think the Apple TV hardware is so good, I could use the current Apple TVs I have for the next decade and probably not feel like I needed anything. The software side, sure, there are some things, the TV app, the embrace of some sort of system-wide guide system that would be useful. But overall, I think the Apple TV is the best streamer on the market by a landslide.
I'd agree with you. We've talked on the show about how different companies having kind of, especially in the high-end side of home entertainment, having different perspectives on content delivery and how they can deliver the very best, lossless audio and this kind of thing. And in terms of, I'd say, picture quality, things are very, very close between, a 4K Blu-ray and what you stream now because of compression and the advancements of digital delivery. But I'd still want to see a little bit more. I feel like we're recording a couple of hours after Amazon just announced a $39 4K stick. So I believe Amazon have already kind of caught that market and that race to the bottom. But there's a lot of competition in the space when it comes to Android boxes and what they're able to deliver. And I think also there's a competition between, unfortunately, legitimate streaming and piracy at this point as well. And so from my point of view, I kind of agree with you. Hardware-wise, we're almost there. I think there's some unlocking that might need to be done in terms of licenses and that kind of thing for lossless audio. But yeah, software and maybe a rethink on digital rights and digital distribution, I think would be really cool. Because, hey, we can download everything to our Vision Pros, to our phones, to our iPads. So it would be really cool if we could queue that and not have that fluctuation in terms of streaming quality, right?
I think if you look at the Apple TV hardware, there are so many aspirational places you could say it should or it might go in terms of the smart home stuff, putting a screen on it, putting a camera on it. And what I've always thought is there's room for those things in Apple's product lineup, but what I want the Apple TV hardware to do is basically what it does now. And then I want other things on top of that that I can put elsewhere throughout my home, not integrated into the thing that sits below my TV.
So you don't want gesture controls and Face ID and this kind of thing?
No, not maybe the gesture controls thing would be cool. I mean, having used Vision Pro so much, like the gestures are amazing. It's like magic every time you do it. But beyond that, like FaceTime camera, no. Face ID, no, not really. None of that.
Okay. We'll have to wait and see what's in Apple TV's hardware future. Hopefully not too long to wait. But we've got a lot to explore this week, Chance. Everything coming up on the show this week, including our thoughts on the indefinite postponement of the Savant and Apple Music's 2026 halftime show plans, as well as this week's trailer talk, our watch list, and our personal up next picks. But we begin this week's episode with our highlight of The Lost Bus. A determined bus driver and a dedicated school teacher battle to save 22 children from a deadly wildfire.
At 6:30 a.m. this morning, a fire entered the town of Paradise.
Hi, I'm Mary.
Kevin.
This is our bus driver, Kevin.
It's too late.
It's not too late.
This is directed by Paul Greengrass and stars Matthew McConaughey and America Ferrera, and is set during the 2018 California camp fire that claimed 85 lives and destroyed more than 18,000 structures. It's based on the book Paradise, One Town's Struggle to Survive an American Wildfire by Lizzie Johnson, and it's produced by Jason Blum's Blumhouse and Jamie Lee Curtis of Comet Films, with a screenplay co-written by both Paul Greengrass and Apple Originals, and I'd say at this point Hollywood stalwart Brad Inglesby. Very quickly, the premise, very simple. A bus driver has to navigate a bus carrying children and their teacher to safety through the 2018 Camp Fire, which becomes the deadliest fire in Californian history. We see the events unfurl through the eyes of Matthew McConaughey's portrayal of Kevin McKay, a bus driver who's recently returned to California to look after his elderly mother following the death of his father, as well as rekindle a relationship with his own son. America Ferrera's portrayal of Mary Ludwig, a school teacher caring for 22 children, gets aboard Kevin McKay's school bus, as well as we have Yul Vasquez, California's Fire Chief Martinez, and Ashley Atkinson's portrayal of Ruby Bishop, the school bus deputy dispatcher, as well as, of course, I'd say a character in itself is the fire itself. Now, I watched the film in my home theatre with older family members, and because of that had to crank up the heating. I'd say too much in my opinion, so I experienced, I'd say almost like a 4D type presentation of The Lost Bus, Chance. How did you watch it, and how did it make you feel?
I watched it in my basement with my wife, Emily. The house set to a crisp 67 degrees inside, 67, so that's Fahrenheit, so very crisp, very nice. No 4D fire experience here. But overall, I really liked it. I went into it not knowing a whole bunch about what to expect. I hadn't heard of it until you told me about it a couple weeks ago. Hadn't seen the trailer, so I went into it kind of flying blind. It ticked a lot of the boxes about what I like in a good movie, which is it's based on a true story, has a strong lead character who has kind of a dark backstory that he's still fighting through. And there was good chemistry, I thought, between Matthew McConaughey's character and America Ferrera's character. And one thing I didn't expect was just how kind of stressful it would be to watch. There's lots of moments where you wonder in your mind if they are going to be able to get out of the situation they found themselves in. And part of that is because the CGI I was actually really impressed with. It looked pretty good. And also knowing that it was based on a real event and that people, particularly in areas like California and Canada, they go through these types of wildfires. Knowing that it wasn't completely made up in that regard, I think made it a little bit more realistic and stressful.
Yeah, I think the premise of it is stressful in itself, especially when you've got kids involved. And then you experience, firsthand the bravery of the two that are trying to keep these children safe and return them to their parents, as well as, there's a moment in the third act where they start to discuss their future plans and how they were viewing life leading up to this moment where, suddenly your world is just taken, whereas you feel untouchable moments before it. And I thought that was a real key element to the storytelling here. In terms of performances, I mean, Matthew McConaughey, a good few years ago, they talked about the reconnaissance, right? And Matthew McConaughey coming back. I never really felt he ever left.
Yeah.
And America Ferrera, honestly, hadn't been on my radar during like the Ugly Betty days. But as she came into features, I just think she's an incredible talent. In terms of, though, and I really want to kind of get back to this, there's a tribute here as well in the way that all of the fire people are portrayed and that whole setup. And there's also an interesting conflict there between them and the power company, for which, if it wasn't for them and their cabling, tragedies like this wouldn't happen. There is an environmental statement here right at the end where it's, every year the fires get bigger, and that's the truth. We're being damn fools.
I recognize that too throughout the movie, but I kept wanting them to just go a little bit further in addressing why these wildfires happen, which is a combination of climate change and the environmental factors of it all. And also Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, their role in it. And yes, they kind of touch at it. There's some scenes between the PG&E boss or whoever that was and the fire chief that are very tense. But I just wanted them to take it a couple steps further from time to time and really get into why this was happening, who was at fault, and what can be done to prevent it in the future. Like, I could have done with a little bit more substance in that regard, and maybe 5 to 10 minutes less of the Matthew McConaughey driving the bus through the fire scenes, which were very good scenes, but there were a lot of them. You kind of would have liked a little something more.
I did feel like there was a lot of build-up leading to this, and I wasn't too sure necessarily where some of the personal exposition was going. Overall, I mean, in terms of the horror element to this, of course, I mentioned Jason Blum. Now, there was a couple of years ago pictures of Jason Blum and Tim Cook having a walk on Apple Park. And I was convinced that Jason Blum was going to be doing something for Apple Vision Pro. That hasn't happened as yet. So I'd imagine this was very much about this project and possible future projects. What I really found interesting about the presentation of this is, yes, it is very much a triumph over tragedy type of film. And you're learning about the characters, but also you're learning about how fire moves and how fires evolve. To a point, I felt like Blumhouse Productions, and I'm sure with Jamie Lee Curtis and her experience in horror as well, they've brought in horror elements here where you're chasing the wind and you're chasing the embers and seeing where they go next and destruct. Before the cable comes loose, we see that wind rattling it, a little bit like a Final Destination movie to an extent. And the VFX are really, really interesting in this, because whilst there is a ton of VFX in here, something that I thought was really, really special was that Paul Greengrass actually used actual fire for the most part for this. Not CGI flames on a green screen. Instead, he actually controlled gas burns, creating heat, smoke, and genuine danger. And the production team then laid gas lines across an abandoned arts college campus in New Mexico and created an inferno that the actors had to navigate whilst also keeping 22 child performers safe.
Wow.
So that adds a little bit more intensity now that I know that after seeing it. I can understand why it does feel so real and why some of the scenes do feel so dark because, of course, they're surrounded in smoke. I didn't want to stop you at the beginning when you were saying about the VFX because, again, there's plenty there. But wow.
I can only imagine the stress that puts on them actually producing the movie and filming and keeping everybody safe. And I'm sure it adds a layer of reality and makes it maybe even easier to like get into character, and because you know what's happening around you. And I knew it was a true story going into it. I knew about the campfires. I knew about everything that California has gone through. I knew about the specific 2018 things that the movie addresses. But what I didn't realize that is actually true is the whole like bus aspect. Like there was a bus driver named Kevin McKay who drove 22 kids out of the wildfires. I, watching it, had thought that maybe that was like a dramatization, like a way of building upon the real event and putting a human layer on it. But no, that actually happened. And it's based on the book that you mentioned and all of that. Kevin McKay is a real person. The family aspect of it with his son, that's real. I saw some pictures when I was researching of the original people, like the actual Kevin McKay and America Ferrera character, Mary. Those actual people with the cast of the movie, which I just thought was so cool. And something I did not know going into it.
In terms of the presentation, noisy dark scenes, right? Because this was shot, I believe, mainly handheld for realism. And there is a bit of like Bourne shaky cam going on, which I actually really appreciated just because it adds to that frantic element of everything that's evolving. We have people that are looting in the middle of fires, which it never ceases to amaze me that there are people like that.
That was one of the most stressful moments of the film for me, was because that came out of nowhere. And then it clicks in your mind. You're like, oh, yeah, that actually happens in situations like this, which is just terrible.
Yeah, you've got other people, in the dark, holding a gun, I believe, for safety, so that they're not looted. Maybe, I don't know, it was quite ominous in a particular scene where Mary is looking for water for the kids. And there's just some really grounded moments in this that its presentation, the audio, I have to mention, low frequency energy all over the place, which is brilliant and really adding dimension to both the flames and to the wind. There's also like an emotional score here from James Newton Howard, who I wouldn't say his score particularly stands out. It definitely adds to what's going on around it, but I feel like it is drowned out by the chaos. And there's just lots going on here for those with an Atmos capable system. I'd imagine if you've got AirPods Max or if you've got AirPods Pro, you're going to experience at least some of that, and that's going to resonate with you as well. The Lost Bus is now playing in select theatres and will stream globally this coming Friday on Apple TV+. All right, now on to something that I know is one of your favourite things, and that is Apple's many forays into personal audio devices. And, well, I'm still getting over how amazing AirPods Pro 3 are. And yet, a week has passed, and we have yet another announcement from Apple, this time for the Powerbeats line. And I say the Powerbeats line because it's not just a product, it's a line now, Chance. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the Powerbeats Fit, they are a follow-up to the Beats Fit Pro that launched in 2022. And basically, Apple has taken them, rebranded them, and put them under the Powerbeats line, which I think speaks volumes about how influential and important Apple thinks that brand name is. especially following the introduction of the Powerbeats Pro 2 back in February of this year, I think. As important and interesting as that rebrand is, in terms of what is actually new with Powerbeats Fit, there's not much here. They really focused on the fit. They've made it, I think they said 20% more flexible in terms of the wing tips that go in your ear. So Powerbeats Fit, as opposed to Powerbeats Pro that go with an ear hook over your ears, Powerbeats Fit have a wing tip that goes on the inside of your ears. So that form factor doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't work for everybody. But Apple thinks that this will be a big improvement with that 20% more flexible design. But otherwise, things are largely the same to the Beats Fit Pro. You still have the H1 audio chip. You would have liked to see an update to the H2. Same battery life as before. I think it's 6 hours with active noise cancellation enabled or 7 hours without. Same $200 price point. I think one of the most exciting things is the colors, too. There's jet black, gravel gray, power pink, and spark orange. So if you got an orange iPhone 17 Pro, you can get orange Powerbeats Fit to go along with it.
I saw your phone and accessories photo, Chance.
Oh, yeah.
A fan of orange.
A fan. You don't have to be a fan of orange, I guess, but you should be a fan of Apple trying something different with the 17 Pro colors.
I agree.
And honestly, Beats kind of set the precedent with this, with the Powerbeats Pro that came out in February that were available in a very bright orange color. Beats has always been more ambitious and bold with colors than Apple has. So to finally have some sort of connection across those two lineups, it's nice, it's fun.
And one thing I noticed for Beats products, which I feel like is one of those disadvantages compared to Apple's AirPods products, is you can actually buy AirPods replacement tips from Apple stores, whereas the Beats line, I don't think you can.
That's a good question. I don't think so.
That's the one thing I think, like, if you're at a pinch, how do you get replacement ear tips? And are they, like, available? Or is it just a case of, well, when they're gone, you've got to get one from a third party? And that's why when I travel, I'm always going to travel with my AirPods Pro 3. Mm-hmm. But I love Powerbeats, and these could be great for someone that doesn't want the hook design over their ears.
The hook design is the most secure fit I've ever had with a pair of earbuds, I think. But you can't deny that there's a little bit more effort involved in getting them on and getting them situated correctly each time. But honestly, AirPods Pro 3 are so good in how they fit now with the foam tips and how further deep they go in your ears that it's a hard sell now to say that the ear hook design of the Powerbeats Pro is that much better than AirPods Pro 3.
I'm actually interested to know, because a lot of my friends that AirPods Pro didn't work for them, like the first or second generation, haven't even really considered AirPods Pro 3 yet. And I'm really interested to see how that fit is for people that, AirPods Pro wasn't compatible with. And I don't think we've heard from them yet.
I know MKBHD in his review, he said that AirPods Pro had never fit him, but AirPods Pro 3 do fit him, which is a pretty big endorsement if you can somehow match the ear shape of MKBHD and get him to say that in a video. So, yeah. You should definitely try them if you think they haven't fit you in the past. I think AirPods Pro 3 are a big enough change that it's worth just about everybody trying again.
I don't know if you've tried it yourself, but the dual pair AirPods, you can have two pairs connected to an Apple TV and you can watch in unison. Now that there are so many different types of headphones and earphones that Apple are making, I'd love to see that extended and to maybe like 4 pairs or 6 pairs. You could have like a what are they called? Silent discos?
Yeah,
or like a silent cinema night. Be so cool. And I think that layers into some Apple TV talk, because it's been a couple weeks since tvOS 26 came to the public, and we're still waiting for some Apple TV app updates from our favorite apps to integrate with profiles and the like. I've not seen any just yet. And that is a little bit worrying considering the close partnerships that Apple have with Disney. Disney's prices keep going up, and we'll keep recommending their shows, as you'll find out a little bit later on in the podcast. So, Just a quick plea to listeners, if you have checked out any apps, third party, independent, or one of the big streamers actually integrating with profiles, do let us know. It's time for us to talk trailer talk. Each week, we explore a couple of trailers. This week was actually a very, very busy week for Apple Originals when it came to trailers, starting with the debut trailer for Knife Edge, chasing Michelin stars, a new documentary series, which looks fantastic, coming out October 10th, so just over a week away, alongside the season 3 debut of Loot, coming October 15th. But a little bit down the road is our first trailer talk for this week, Down Cemetery Road. When a house explodes in a quiet Oxford suburb and a girl disappears in the aftermath, neighbour Sarah Trafford becomes obsessed with finding her and enlists the help of private investigator Zoe Bohm. Zoe and Sarah suddenly find themselves in a complex conspiracy that reveals people long believed dead are still among the living, while the living are fast joining the dead.
You have found your way to the heart of something huge.
Whoever is left standing, you take them out.
Some people might see what we've been through as a bonding experience.
Borrow you a stiff drink. It's 10 in the morning, Zoe. You're very prim for an outlaw.
This is adopted from CWA Diamond Dagger award-winning author Mick Herron's novel of the same name from the Zoe Bohm book series. Down Cemetery Road is executive produced by Academy Award, BAFTA Award, Golden Globe Award, and Emmy Award winner Emma Thompson in her debut on Apple TV, who also stars alongside Golden Globe Award and two-time Olivier Award winner Ruth Wilson. This also, based on the trailer, stars Trying's Darren Boyd. And that's very, very cool because I love what Darren Boyd does in that series. Obviously taking on a completely different role here. His character named simply the letter C for this one. Now, this is the second Mick Herron adaptation coming to Apple TV Plus following the prolonged success of Slow Horses, currently airing its 5th season. What do you think of this trailer, Chance?
I thought it was interesting. It fell into the thriller category, I guess, which is not a genre of TV shows or movies that I usually seek out or watch on a regular basis. So I don't know if it's something that I will add to my TV Plus queue necessarily, but it does look good in terms of things you'd expect from that genre. And I know Apple in their press release, and they're really trying to make that Slow Horses connection. So I think Apple's behind this show, but I don't necessarily think it's for me.
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Give it a chance. I'm personally really looking forward to this just because of the star power involved in this. I'm not necessarily the biggest Mick Herron book reader. In fact, I haven't really beyond the first couple of Slow Horses books. And I do try occasionally to listen to the later books to be one step ahead. But actually, I've found watching the show and letting them unravel on screen is far more rewarding. But Down Cemetery Road, it premieres with its first 2 of 8 episodes on October 29th across all of your screens on Apple TV+. And our last trailer talk for the week makes its streaming debut actually 1 week earlier, following a limited theatrical run and next week's New York Film Festival world premiere. And that is Stiller and Mirror, Nothing is Lost. Ben Stiller tells the story of his parents, comedy icons Jerry Stiller and Anne Maria, exploring their impact both on popular culture and at home, where the lines between creativity, family, life, and art are often blurred.
Now the comedy house, Stiller and Mirror.
They're looking at not only my partner in comedy, this is the mother of my 2 kids.
This is the father of one.
We come from a showbiz family. I remember never knowing if that was real or them rehearsing something.
We don't know, Ben. That's why we're so messed up.
They have this incredible marriage, and I wanted to understand how they did it.
They're not superstars.
Right.
They're just performers who are married with kids and trying to do the best with both worlds.
Clearly, with this project, Ben Stiller is turning the camera on himself and his family to examine Jerry and Anne's enormous influence on their lives, along with the generational lessons we all can learn from those we love. On a personal note, as you get older, of course, the probability of losing those closest to you becomes more and more a reality. So this project looks to dig into that feeling, whilst also giving Ben Stiller the opportunity to memorialise his parents and add an extra dimensionality to them beyond their comedic, public-facing personas. I'm really, really looking forward to this. I think this is probably the documentary I'm looking forward to most since Still, a Michael J. Fox movie. And of course, we had that 2-part Steve Martin documentary, which was very, very good as well. So this feels like it's following along those lines. What did you think?
I loved it, and I think I'm in the same boat as you were. I thought Still, the Michael J. Fox one, was fantastic. I'm a huge Michael J. Fox fan. I love Back to the Future. Family Ties is one of my favorite TV shows, so that was right up my alley. And yeah, this one too is, I think Jerry Stiller in particular for me is just so good. And I think a lot of people maybe rightfully say he's best known as Frank Costanza in Seinfeld, which is fair. But where I got to know him and where I watched him first is King of Queens, where he plays Arthur Spooner. That role and the way he holds that show together is just so magical. And the combination of him, Leah Remini, and Kevin James, like that trio, I love it so much. That's one of my favorite TV shows. That's one of the best memories I have of growing up with my parents is watching King of Queens. I think I saw an interview recently too where Kevin James was asked about doing a King of Queens spinoff. And his response was basically, without Jerry Stiller, I just don't think we could do it. He was the one holding that show together, the one adding so much comedic timing to every episode of that show. And from a Ben Stiller perspective too, this feels both a way for him to give people a way to see another side of his parents, but to also see a different side of him, which I think is something he's focused on, trying to maybe separate his persona from some of the movies and things he did earlier in his career to what he's trying to do now, which you see with Severance. And this, I think, will be an interesting way to see who Ben Stiller as a person is nowadays, not just Ben Stiller, the actor, the director.
Yeah. I don't have those kind of same memories growing up in the UK. So I think my first kind of foray into Jerry's work was actually like his cameos in some of Ben Stiller's earlier films.
Oh, yeah.
They're just brilliant because he is most of the time playing his father, which is great, right? I'm so jealous of everyone at New York Film Festival next week. They get to check this out. There is a world premiere with a Q&A alongside a couple of other screenings happening over the course of New York Film Festival. So if you have an opportunity, there are still tickets available. Go check it out. But for everyone else, Stiller and Mirror, Nothing is Lost, premieres October 24th across all of your screens on Apple TV+, alongside a limited theatrical run on October 16th. One thing I've got to know about Ben Stiller since following him on socials, since, Severance, is Ben Stiller's basketball fandom, which I'm fascinated by. And I love the fact that he feels so free to just kind of put it out there when he knows so many people aren't going to necessarily be interested in his sports fandom. I'm a soccer fan. Which I mention all the time on this podcast. I'm also a bit of a baseball fan. So, go Blue Jays for this past week, getting the Eastern Conference. You're a baseball fan as well.
I'm a huge baseball fan. Go Cincinnati Reds, we're recording this on Tuesday, and they play their first playoff game tonight at 9 p.m. my time. So it's going to be a very, very late night. But yes, I'm a huge baseball fan. More so baseball than American football, than basketball. I do like basketball, not as much as Ben Stiller, but baseball is my sport.
So, not an American football fan?
I'll watch it if it's on, if I'm with other people. I don't have a dislike for it. I grew up in a family that was baseball and basketball, and nobody really cared about football. And I've just kind of carried that on with my life. I don't really have that emotional attachment that you develop to a sports team when you're young. I don't really have that with a football team, which has always just made it difficult to dive in. And for their like a new football season to start and then be like, this year I'm going to become a huge fan of the Dallas Cowboys or something. That's just not, I don't know, it doesn't carry the same weight as baseball and basketball.
So I guess that leads me to asking, what is the pull for these halftime shows? Because I'd imagine, if Coldplay was announced, you'd be all over it. But Apple Music, once again, hosting the Super Bowl halftime show. This time, a really interesting announcement. This past weekend during halftime, Bad Bunny has been announced as the halftime show headliner at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California on February 6th. Really, Chance, I think the first time I really heard about Bad Bunny was when he got involved with pro wrestling a few years ago. And then now he's in a couple of films. Caught Stealing, it's just out this week on the Apple TV app from Darren Aronofsky. He plays a pivotal role in that one as well. And then I'd say like a year later in Cupertino with friends, every eatery we went out to, Bad Bunny's music was played in the background. I guess knowing that you're a Coldplay fan, but also I'd say like equally Swiftie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you a little bit disappointed? Or are you happy? No Taylor Swift, because there was a rumor that negotiations were rife with Taylor Swift and they fell through. But this feels like a moment with the Bad Bunny announcement that has its own cultural and maybe even political significance.
It's interesting because I feel like historically, Super Bowl halftime shows have alternated, at least on some sort of pattern, between acts that younger people would like and acts that older people would like. So Justin Timberlake versus Paul McCartney versus the Rolling Stones, like that whole sequence versus Prince, like that whole era, there was always a tick-tock between old and new. It seems like maybe in the Apple Music era of the halftime show, we're not seeing that because last year we had Kendrick Lamar and this year is Bad Bunny. I think Taylor Swift would have been a great choice, but I don't know what's in it for Taylor Swift to agree to go through all of the headache and rigmarole that comes with doing the Super Bowl halftime show. You don't get paid for it. You get paid in the quote-unquote exposure. You probably realistically lose money.
Yeah, The Weeknd paid out of pocket for his appearance.
Yeah. Taylor Swift doesn't need the exposure. I don't think she really wants to put her name on something that's not her own. We've seen that with her in the past where she wants to own everything. I think I saw one of the reasons that talks between Taylor Swift and the NFL / Rock Nation for the Super Bowl this year was she wanted the rights to the performance after it aired, and the NFL or whoever wasn't willing to compromise on that. But Bad Bunny, you made a good point, is I think it's a political choice just because some of the things Bad Bunny has done in terms of him speaking out against ICE and some of the things going on in the United States right now, I think Apple is putting themselves in a position to where there's no way we get through the halftime show without something on topics like that being brought up on stage. And we'll talk about this Savant here in a little bit, but for a company that likes to stay apolitical and not get attached to anything controversial, choosing Bad Bunny for the halftime show is a bold choice.
I think a big element to this is it's branded as an Apple Music halftime show, but the performance, the booking is all sorted by Rock Nation. So it was interesting during the live stream of this announcement with Ebro Darden and Zane Lowe, how they were talking about they don't really have a say in who gets chosen, but they were really happy with who was chosen in the end. They don't get asked about a short list of artists that they'd like to perform. It's very much a Rock Nation decision. I think it's really interesting in the sense that I think, and you can correct me here, this is the first non-English language performer at a halftime show maybe Shakira as well,
yeah.
but she's transitioned to English speaking songs, whereas I believe Bad Bunny is very much Spanish only.
Yes, I think so.
That makes things really interesting and a first. Kind of going into the cultural significance again and the timing of the choice. Bad Bunny actually cancelled his US dates in fear of ICE possibly targeting his fans. By that, beyond his performances on like Saturday Night Live and that kind of thing, this will be the first and probably only time that we'll see Bad Bunny perform in a stadium on US soil. It's actually really interesting, given all of his success, he hasn't yet ventured into Europe. That's coming soon. So that's going to be really, really cool. And it'll be interesting to see what the numbers are like for this halftime show. I'll be honest, I would love, and I know this won't happen whilst Rock Nation are in charge, but I'd love to see something a little heavier.
Yeah.
At some point, as a fan of Metallica, and I know I'm gonna sound like a right boomer by saying it, but Metallica in San Francisco, there are only so many chances for that to happen, and I feel like this one slipped through the fingers. But I'm looking forward to this Bad Bunny performance, and I'm looking forward to actually being exposed for the first time to his performance, not just his music in the background. So yeah, very, very cool, and something a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. I think Coldplay was the halftime performer in 2016, so for me it's all been downhill since then. Nobody's lived up to that. But Bad Bunny, I'm glad to see Rock Nation stepping outside of the box and, like you said, going with a non-English first performer. On the long-term scale, you have to want Taylor Swift at some point. You have to want Adele. I think she was also rumored to be in talks to do it this year, maybe. But I think it's interesting seeing the choices that Rock Nation has made since they took over the booking and it became the Apple Music halftime show versus the Pepsi halftime show, I think.
That was it, yeah.
I remember that was always one of the reasons they said Taylor Swift wouldn't do it, is because she had a brand deal with Coke, I think. So she couldn't do the Pepsi Super Bowl halftime show. So when Apple took over, everybody was like, Taylor is doing it this year. And so far that hasn't happened.
One of the other things, we were talking about rights and, who controls what. I believe that was the downfall in Apple's conversations with the NFL when it came to picking up of the packages, because they wanted access to like immersive video and exclusivity there. And I'm really still hoping that we do see this halftime show next year in immersive video, but that might be the holdout there. One thing I also kind of really, really hope that gets explored in immersive video, the next chapter in Schmigadoon. I don't know if you ever watched this show. It was fantastic, but it was about two doctors who, they're in a bit of a relationship crisis, and they step into this magical world known as Schmigadoon, which was basically just a live, living, breathing musical. And it was fantastic. Well, inspired by that show, Cinco Paul and Ken Durio's TV series debuted at the Kennedy Center earlier this year as a live musical. And it's going to be coming to New York next year, beginning in April. I'm really hoping to make the trip out for that. Kennedy Center in January was a little bit of a hard pull for me. April through September is going to be making its Broadway run, so I'm really, really excited for that. But kind of going back to immersive video, this just feels like a prime example of what immersive video could do if there was a success there in lieu of a season 3.
I mean, the opportunities for immersive video in this category are endless. I've always said one thing I would love to see is some sort of Hamilton performance in immersive video, or even if it's just as simple as they drop a camera down on the front of the stage and you just get to look around. Anything like that would be so cool. And I don't think we've seen anything really in that category yet.
Yeah, I'm hoping Schmigadoon will be the first. We'll have to wait and see. But the more we say it, hopefully someone at Apple listens. Also announced this week in terms of the Apple Originals now is the premiere date for 6-part French language thriller The Hunt, with its first look linked in this very episode's show notes. It debuts December 3rd with 2 episodes, and The Hunt follows Frank and his longtime friends who enjoy spending their weekends hunting together. But one Sunday, they come across another group of hunters who start targeting them without explanation. And when one of their party is shot, Frank's friends strike back, sending an attacker to the ground before escaping and keeping the event a secret. Going back to his life as usual alongside his wife Crystal, Frank's next few days are tracked by hunters who are now hell-bent on revenge. So this is an interesting one to see out the year. We've had mixed response to the French originals so far. Really loved Drops of God, but there have been some other French titles that haven't really gone anywhere on the service. This looks fantastic, and hopefully a trailer soon. Now, one of the main talking points for this week was going to be the Savant. Unfortunately, that series, which is inspired by the true life story written in the Cosmopolitan in 2019, in a story titled "Is It Possible to Stop a Mass Shooting Before It Happens?" It's about a woman who has come to be known as the Savant, who infiltrates online hate groups in order to prevent large-scale public attacks, and is set around the division of the Anti-Defamation League that actually infiltrates online hate groups. 2 days before its expected premiere last Friday, it was pulled from both the Apple TV Plus schedule and pretty much everywhere across the TV app. I mean, it's still got its listing, but it says coming at a later date, and from all socials. This was really interesting to me, but it wasn't a surprise. Apple were very vague with this and quite opaque when it came to what they were saying about the reasoning, with their statement being quite simple: after careful consideration, we've made the decision to postpone the Savant. And that statement was made to Deadline, saying, "We appreciate your understanding and look forward to releasing this series at a future date." Now, this isn't the first time we've seen something like this. I can go back way before Apple TV Plus was even a thing. We got the Dr. Dre Vital Signs anthology series that was cancelled pre-Apple TV Plus launch due to the violent nature of the show. And Tehran Season 3, which I've watched on Israeli TV via VPN, is still indefinitely postponed due to the ongoing war in the Middle East. This was really, really interesting to me, and I guess from an outsider's perspective, maybe I have a different perspective to you, but obviously following the political violence that many of us will have unfortunately witnessed without warning on social media, and that's a subject in itself, I wasn't surprised to see this show indefinitely postponed and maybe not make it to air. That said, I do have the privilege of being able to see shows before they launch, and whilst the embargo is still very much tight and that's been moved, I can't talk too much about it, but I can give some overall thoughts. But before that chance, this is what Jessica Chastain had to say about the situation. She said, "I want to say how much I value my partnership with Apple. They've been incredible collaborators and I deeply respect their team. That said, I wanted to reach out and let you know that we're not aligned on the decision to pause the release of the Savant. In the last 5 years since we've been making the show, we've seen an unfortunate amount of violence in the United States. The kidnapping attempt on Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the assassination attempts to President Trump, the political assassinations of Democratic representatives in Minnesota, the attack on Speaker Pelosi's husband, the assassination on conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, and the recent shooting at an ABC affiliate station in California. and over 300 school shootings across the country. These incidents, though far from encompassing the full range of violence witnessed in the United States, illustrate a broader mindset that crosses the political spectrum and must be confronted. I've never shied away from difficult subjects, and whilst I wish this show wasn't so relevant, unfortunately it is. The Savant is about the heroes who work every day to stop violence before it happens, and honouring their courage feels more urgent than ever. While I respect Apple's decision to pause the release for now, I remain hopeful that the show will reach audiences soon. Until then, I'm wishing safety and strength for everyone, and I'll let you know if and when The Savant is released. And I think that's quite telling right at the end there on the if. From someone that hasn't experienced the show and is just going on the premise and the trailer, what were your thoughts on this news, and actually how kind of last minute the decision was to pull the show?
I think it's disappointing because I think the best form of any sort of art, whether it's TV shows, music, movies, the best form of any of that is when it is a take on real life cultural events. And I don't necessarily think the timing to those events matters. And I think when you greenlight a show like this or buy the rights to a show like this, what exactly did you expect to happen? Because it's a show about mass shootings largely. And unfortunately, mass shootings are only becoming more and more common with time. So I don't really think there was ever a chance this show would get released at a time when there wasn't something like this in the news. Whether it's the assassination of somebody like Charlie Kirk, whether it's about a school shooting, there's not a time where you can make something that is a commentary on a political event and it's not going to be relevant to something happening in the real world. And that's why I think it's disappointing. And I kind of wonder, is Apple's concern about releasing this because they know what side the blowback will come from? How big of a factor did that play in their decision?
Well, I think it's detailed and hinted at in the trailer itself, right? But it is dealing with, the far right, right? And white supremacy. And what I would say is this is a show that consists of 8 30-minute episodes, 30 minutes or more. And from my opinion, and again, this isn't a review because I have to tread carefully, but what I would say is there isn't enough time there to really explore extremism along with those that are confronting it. And it doesn't really explore where extremism comes from, but very much it's like a kind of, I don't want to be harsh, but kind of cartoonized, kind of fetishized version of what white supremacy is and where it could come from. This is based on the idea or a plan for some kind of political assassination and stopping that from happening. And again, I don't want to be disrespectful because people, put time and effort into telling these stories and trying to tell them in a delicate way. I think it could have been a lot more thought out, and at times I do think it's a little bit clumsy. And this is a show that, of course, the project took shape in early 2019, and the political landscape has changed somewhat there. So I think it's a really interesting predicament. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't air with Apple and it ends up somewhere else. But then Jessica Chastain has a couple of other projects and has this relationship now with Apple that is starting with this project. We've got The Dealer, which is an upcoming drama series set around the world of high art, starring alongside Adam Driver. And then we've got The Off Weeks, which is a new limited series actually centered on a divorced writing professor played by Ben Stiller, with filming actually set to commence next January. So I feel like this may throw a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of that relationship. But as I said, Tehran Season 3, I don't think we're ever going to see it come to Apple TV+. There was also another show that was dealing with like Russia, Ukraine, which was cancelled as well. And it was Ukrainian filmmakers that lost out on that. So, there are difficult decisions, but that's my view on where the future of the show could be going. And I guess a little bit of insight from someone that's seen the show.
I think I'm in the same boat as you, where I'd be surprised if it ever gets released, or at least released by Apple. I could see a world where Apple just relinquishes the rights and Jessica Chastain takes it somewhere else and it gets released. Because one thing I think we've seen throughout at least some of the history of Apple TV Plus is that Apple is not scared about burning a bridge with a creator. They know good and well that there are plenty of creators in the world, and they know good and well that losing a relationship with one person doesn't impact their overall business to the degree that that's going to be a factor in their decision making. We saw it with the, Wolves. They canceled the release of the theatrical release of the first Wolves movie, and there's a second one in development. And that whole relationship just deteriorated because Apple didn't take into consideration the creator's feelings. And I'm curious what you think about this, because this is what was one of my responses when I saw this news last week, is it feels like at times Apple is scared about being too political or too controversial or provocative, primarily with the TV Plus content it makes. And I think that's partially because they know that they have a lot more to lose if they get a lot of blowback from a certain person or a certain political party or a certain crowd of people, compared to where, I don't know, if Netflix releases something controversial, Netflix has less to lose because Netflix's hands aren't in so many different categories. Apple is in a position where if they release something that makes the president of the United States mad and puts them on his radar for something, he'll just say, okay, 25% tariffs on iPhones again. And that can't happen to Netflix or whoever.
Yeah, and I also think, the FCC being used as a political tool is something to have genuine worry about.
Yep.
We got to remember also how big Apple is as a company, and those decisions, obviously they go to the main people in the end, but the teams are widespread, and Apple TV Plus is a huge organization with so many different bases. I don't think Apple are necessarily that careful. I think what they don't want is they don't want something that's gratuitous or something that doesn't speak to as many people as it can. And I think whilst there are people online that are currently kind of whistleblowing on themselves, talking about a show that they haven't seen based on the trailer and feeling that they've been attacked when it's actually terribly, horribly bigoted white supremacists that are being attacked in this. I think that says a lot, right? But unfortunately, there are so many people that are going to talk and have an opinion on something that they haven't seen, and that opinion is almost going to drown out the thing that's being created and the message within it. And it might just be a point where I actually hadn't realized because I wasn't in that bubble. But when I started to dig in and I saw certain YouTube channels dissecting the trailer a few weeks back, and I saw a completely different conversation around this show. And to a point, as I say, I think there are elements to this show that are a little bit clumsy, that there are some valid points, even though the criticism isn't valid because they haven't seen the thing. So that's kind of where I would come from that. I think if this would have been a show that would have maybe been an anthology series where it's exploring different types of extremism and how the internet plays a role in that, I think that would have been really interesting, because the Anti-Defamation League aren't just targeting white supremacists. There's all sorts of extremism in all flavors, and that is a scary thought in on itself.
I did see that Ben Stiller tweeted in support of Jimmy Kimmel when Jimmy Kimmel got taken off the air. I would love to see some of the behind the scenes about what goes on when Apple makes a decision like this, that not only frustrates the people behind the Savant, But then also one of your biggest partners in Ben Stiller, he doesn't agree. Is Ben Stiller calling up Zach or Jamie or Eddie or Tim and saying, hey, this is not the move you need to be making right now? There's just so many moving parts that go into something like this, with so many factors at play, inside Apple, outside Apple, the broader world, because Apple did kind of, like you said, they did push through some of the initial online criticism about this show, because people were mad about it for weeks leading up to when it was finally postponed. They lived through all of that. They didn't cancel it. They were 48 hours away from releasing it. Then they made the decision. It's just the timing of it is very odd.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the Savant. And hopefully, it's delayed indefinitely, but I think you definitely want to be able to get an opportunity to see it.
Yeah, I mean,
on Apple TV Plus or otherwise.
I mean, at this point, this is kind of the best promotion they could have for the show, because they've opened it up to a lot of people who now want to watch it and say, why did they cancel this or delay this? So, yeah, I would like to see it purely from being fascinated with that aspect of it.
Let's talk about what is out this week with this week's Apple TV releases. Starting today with the finale of Platonic Season 2. See, something a little more cheerful.
Yeah.
Alongside new episodes of The Morning Show and Slow Horses. We then also have the Campeones Cup on MOS Season Pass, LA versus Toluca. And on Thursday, we've got some Apple Arcade releases, with the Apple Arcade October releases consisting of Domino's Classic Tile Game Plus by Mobility Wear, Piffle Plus by Hipster Whale, developer I love, and Thomas and Friends Let's Roll Plus by Story Toys for the younger eyes and fingers and hands amongst us. On Friday, we see the streaming premiere of our highlight, The Lost Bus, alongside kids and family premiere, The Sisters Grimm, and the immersive premiere of Elevated, Maine, hosted by Tim Robbins. We also have new episodes of Invasion and The Reluctant Traveller, which I believe either this week or very, very soon. It's going to see Eugene Levy meeting royalty, so something to look forward to. And whilst there's no more Friday Night Baseball until next season, I'm going to say it again, go Blue Jays, the sports coverage does continue on Apple TV and MOS this weekend, starting on Saturday with the latest game day on MOS Season Pass, and on Sunday, Sunday Night Soccer, LAFC versus Atlanta and Vancouver versus San Jose. Finally, on Tuesday, F1 the Movie is available on 4K Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray Steelbook alongside HD Blu-ray and DVD. Blu-ray formats will include a lossless audio presentation and a digital copy redeemable in the Apple TV app, a first, I believe, when it comes to Apple originals making their way to physical media, as well as you're going to get all of the extras from the digital release now on physical disc. And I was actually sent a copy early thanks to my friends at Warner Brothers Entertainment. What I can say is that this is slightly louder than the digital release by a few decibels. There's a better bass response. There's also better balance amongst all of the audio channels, but very little in terms of top channel activity beyond the stadium commentary for those with dedicated Atmos channels or home theaters. And just like the digital release, the sad thing here is the omission of IMAX. So no IMAX at home. Joseph Kosinski said it was shot this way and should be seen this way, so that's disappointing. And I know you got to see F1 the movie. You didn't get to see it?
I did not get to see it.
Oh no, you missed it at Dub Dub.
I did.
You had to leave early. I remember this.
I flew out late Tuesday night, and they were showing it Tuesday night. After hearing everybody talk about what a great experience it was watching F1 in Steve Jobs Theater, I regret not just biting the bullet and staying an extra night to watch it. And I haven't actually seen it at all yet. So I've been waiting for it to come to TV Plus, and I'll probably watch it on Vision Pro whenever that happens.
Well, that's the interesting thing here, right? Because of the omission of IMAX scenes, the expanded ratio, where there is a lot of information that's being cropped in this presentation. I'm really waiting and hoping for an update to the presentation for Apple Vision Pro, and I'm hoping those IMAX scenes come back, because there's something that is a really fun, and I think it's going to be a great addition when someone actually implements it. There's an API for this new dynamic masking system that is added to Vision OS 26. So if you're watching an IMAX film where some scenes are in the IMAX format and then they go back to the letterboxed aspect ratio, it's going to dynamically change. I'm still waiting to see this in action, but as soon as I saw that announcement during Dub, I was very, very excited. So fingers crossed, when that comes, that'll be the time for you to watch F1 the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We've also got some extras, Chance. A plethora of extras, including a plethora of Chief of War extras, including the Olowulu Massacre and another take with Tamura Morrison, and also another take with Jason Momoa. Highest to Lowest gives us a super brief look at Spike Lee and Denzel Washington's past collaborations, with Foundation asking fact or fiction, and whether a quote is from Foundation, a historical figure, or completely made up. Really cool extra there. Platonic Season 2, with its finale, we're getting the Season 2 bloopers, which I always have loved when it comes to extras on DVDs and Blu-rays, and I hope we see them kind of come back more to digital beyond YouTube. And yet another couple of teasers we've got of the upcoming Vince Gilligan mystery thriller Pluribus. I don't know if you're looking forward to this one. It's named after the Latin pluribus unum, out of many, one, referring to the union formed by the separate states in the United States. What have you thought about the teasers so far for this one?
It's hard to make heads or tails out of some of the teasers, I think, but the timing for me is actually perfect, because over the last year, I have watched Breaking Bad all the way through and Better Call Saul all the way through for the first time. So I'm 100% on board and excited for this, having finally watched those two shows that people have been raving about for years and years.
Was it a surprise to you that Better Call Saul ended up being like the better show after all of the hoopla behind Breaking Bad, or is this a discussion we're going to be having?
It's close. I think I actually preferred Breaking Bad, not by a landslide, but just a little bit. I thought it kept your attention a bit more. Better Call Saul was definitely very methodical in how it handled things, and it built up at a slower pace than Breaking Bad, which I can appreciate. I think I just preferred the pace of Breaking Bad a bit more than Better Call Saul. It's like both are fantastic. Like saying one is slightly worse than the other, it's still a fantastic show.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm really looking forward, honestly, to the full trailer so that maybe we know what it's all about. And that's not even guaranteed, I don't think, at this point. As far as taking Apple originals beyond the big screen, though, Slow Horses now has a special London guide in Apple Maps. So if you're local or you're visiting London, it's time to take a visit to Slough House in East London. It's actually the 12th Apple original related maps guide. Genuinely, I think it's one of the best. I love all of these integrations, and I just wish there was a way of being able to explore them on the Apple TV and airdrop them to your device to go away with. Kind of a reverse of what Apple have engineered so far. That's everything coming from Apple Originals. Of course, the Apple TV app reaches far beyond Apple Originals. And of course, I've got my watch list for this week. A bunch of films and a couple of really cool TV shows either starting or coming back. Rabbit Trap is directed by Bryn Cheney and starring Dev Patel, Rose McGowan, and Jade Crute. When a musician and a husband move to a remote house in Wales, the music they make disturbs local ancient folk music, bringing a nameless child to their door who is intent on infiltrating their lives. Sound design in the trailer alone actually blew me away. It starts off very ASMR, and then goes to a very dark and experimental place. I'm looking forward to watching this with AirPods Pro free. My up next pick from last week, Caught Stealing from Darren Aronofsky, that's now available in the TV app in premium VOD. It stars Austin Butler, Matt Smith, Zoe Kravitz, Regina King, and Bad Bunny, so topical. It follows a burnt-out former baseball player unwittingly plunged into a wild fight for survival in the downtown criminal underworld of 90s New York City. Again, this is an epic throwback with an epic score, an action movie, pretty much, from Darren Aronofsky, which is not what you would expect, and it's very heavy-handed when it comes to the sound mix, so it needs to be played loud. For those looking for something a little more quaint, Downton Abbey, the grand finale, is now available on premium VOD. It's directed by Simon Curtis. Also, kind of going back a little bit, Spinal Tap. I didn't even realise this was being made, but Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues, sees Spinal Tap, England's loudest and most punctual band, reunite following a 15-year hiatus for one final concert in the long-awaited sequel to the mockumentary classic. And speaking of throwbacks, Troma cult classic The Toxic Avenger gets a well-earned reboot with an incredible ensemble cast led by Peter Dinklage as the Toxic Avenger, with Kevin Bacon, Elijah Wood, Jacob Tremblay, Julia Davis and Taylor Page. It's now available in the TV app, and it follows the downtrodden janitor Winston Goose, who wields a glowing mop with superhuman strength as he races against time to save his son and stop a ruthless and power-hungry tyrant bent on harnessing toxic superpowers to strengthen his polluted empire. The Naked Gun is now available on Paramount Plus and MGM Plus this week. I don't know if you've managed to check this out or if you were a fan of the originals, Chance.
I haven't yet, and they played the commercial for The Naked Gun during baseball. I swear, between every inning during the last couple months of the season. So it's been on my list to finally check this out, but I haven't had a chance to yet.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And there's a particular skit with a snowman that I think you're going to absolutely love. Friday is also going to be a day that I think you're going to love because it sees the debut of psychological horror Bring Her Back on HBO Max from A24 and Ethan Coen's comedy Honey Don't, which makes its way to Peacock. Shell comes to the TV app also on Friday, and it stars Elizabeth Moss and Kate Hudson in a premise familiar to anyone that saw last year's Academy Award winning The Substance with Demi Moore. Very, very cool premise. And we've also got Steve starring Cillian Murphy, which is debuting on Netflix. And finally, Chad Hartigan's Threesome explores the idea of what happens when a consensual, passionate night between three people ends in a pregnancy or two. So there's something for everyone here. Also on Friday is Twinless, which comes from director James Sweeney, follows two men who have lost their respective twin brothers and develop a growing friendship after meeting in a support group. And we end the watch list with next Tuesday's premiere of One Day in October, a scripted event series based on first-hand accounts of the Hamas attack on Israel that led to the country's invasion of Gaza and ignited a war in the Middle East. The series will debut on October 7th, 2 years since Hamas militants stormed into Israel, killing around 1,200 people, including Israelis, foreign nationals and children, as well as taking more than 200 hostages, with 48 prisoners of war still held captive at the time of this recording. And I know, Chance, this has been a very, very heavy episode, and I'm glad we got to discuss all of the subjects we have. But let's lighten things up a little bit with our up next picks. Both coming to us through Disney Plus and Hulu, depending on where you are listening to this. Where do we want to start, Chance?
I'll go first, and my up next pick is Abbott Elementary, which season 5 premieres this week. It's on ABC here in the United States, and it streams on Hulu/Disney Plus. Abbott Elementary is just the encapsulation of a genre of TV show that I feel is missing nowadays, or is at least significantly less common than it used to be, which is just a 25-minute sitcom that's consistent. They make 18 to 24 episodes a season. It really is the kind of show that I think we need more of and that we've lost in the streaming era where everything is longer. There's more dramas than comedy. There's more sci-fi than comedy. This is the category of TV that I love. Some other shows that I've recently watched in this category, there was Superstore, which also has America Ferrera in it. That's very good.
Yes.
What else? Abbott Elementary. American Auto is another good one. The Man on the Inside is one I just watched on Netflix.
Oh, so good.
And season 2.
With Ted Danson.
Yes, Ted Danson. Stephanie Beatrice. And season 2 of that comes out next month, I think. But Abbott Elementary it's great. And there was an episode this season apparently filmed at a Philadelphia Phillies baseball game. So I'm excited for that. But Abbott Elementary is great. I'm excited for season 5.
Yeah, very much so. I really enjoyed the crossover. I think it was last season with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that was great.
I'd love to see a crossover with another Disney show, English Teacher, which came out last week, the second season. It's so good. So there is lots in this category. I'd love to see that crossover happen.
Yeah.
Maybe. Texas and New York, probably a little too far away to make happen, but hey, Philadelphia and New York, it happens.
Anything's possible.
TV. And talking of which, my up next pick this week is actually on Hulu and Disney Plus as well. It's called Chad Powers and stars Glenn Powell, who I'm really looking forward to in the remake of The Running Man, which I think comes to theaters next month. This is described as Mrs. Doubtfire, but with football. When misconduct derails the college career of star quarterback Ross Holiday, he adopts a disguise and joins a floundering Southern football team under the guise of the skilled and charismatic Chad Powers. And whilst I'm not in the world of American football, so likely I'm going to miss all of the cameos and fan-pleasing details, just that premise, Mrs. Doubtfire meets American football. I am all in on this.
It's quite the pitch. It's enough to make you want to watch just to see how on earth anybody makes that connection.
I'm looking forward to this one. And I got to say, I've really, really enjoyed this episode, Chance. Thank you so much for joining Magic Rays of Light this week.
Thank you for having me. This was great. You reached out and it was an instant yes for me. I'm glad to fill Devin's shoes as best as I can for an episode.
Thank you also to everyone that listens. You can contact us with your thoughts. I'm sure you have plenty on the things that we've discussed this week on both social media via the links in the show notes, and you can reach out via our contact form, also linked in the show notes. Of course, I'll be back next week, reunited once again with Devin, as we talk about The Last Frontier, All of You, and more from the world of Apple TV. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade,
and have a great week.